So, I take my dad's ashes up to Glacier National Park every year. I lived in Colorado when the story happened, and I was headed south through Idaho after I had visited Montana. My car broke down in Salmon, Idaho, and a really nice man helped me out. I was headed through the mountains to Boise to visit a friend. It was about a 5-hour drive before I entered the truly mountainous section of Idaho. I saw a hot spring on the side of this 2-lane highway along the Salmon River. I decided to take a dip after the stress of having my car breaking down. The hot spring had a bathhouse up at the top near the road, and a wheelchair ramp that went down to the area near the springs, where they were on the other side of the river. People had created little bath-shaped sections in the river that were separated by river stones. Actually, you could sit in a spot that was shaped like a hot tub, so that it held the water from the hot springs while the river rushed over it. I got out my car and headed down the hot spring. I took my dog with me. It was twilight. About every half hour, a car passed by. Knowing that I was alone essentially, I took my top off. I was sitting in the hot spring and actually took a photo of a car approaching. The car pulled up next to mine, in front of the bathhouse. It was a truck with 3 men in it. Seamlessly, one of the men got out of the driver's side, and 2 men got out of the passenger side. They moved without qualms, and were covered in heavy black gear. They looked like hunters. I couldn't see the expressions on their face. The driver headed down the wheelchair ramp towards me, not hesitating. He took big long strides. I recognised that there was danger. The 2 passengers from the other side of the car headed down towards a steep bank along the wheelchair ramp, taking a shortcut. I was stuck in between both parties. Hastening, I hid and dressed myself under the water while my dog growled. He never growls. I've only ever heard him growl twice all my life, and this was the second time. The driver kept on walking towards me. He walked out onto the rocks into the river, continuously walking towards me even though he was covered in heavy gear that could get him waterlogged if he fell in the river. The other 2 passengers from the side of the car were also walking out on the rocks, directly in front of me. The driver got so close that I had to grab my dog before he lashed out at the driver. I was freaking out. The man was walking out onto the stones so that he could reach me. He was not hesitating. I couldn't see his face. I grabbed my phone, my keys, my clothes. I dragged my dog in between the 2 parties, my heart in ears. The driver would not stop. He turned around very quickly, making an arc, coming for me still. He was still taking big strides. The passengers were walking towards me as well. I was trapped in between them. I ran up the bank, dragging my dog pretty much by his collar all the way into my car. The only way that I could get into my car without them grabbing me was by throwing my dog into the back and lunging myself into the passenger side door of my car. I threw my keys into the ignition and turned them when the men were walking up between my car and their car. I happened to hit the lock button on the door right when they walked up. Before anything else happened, or before I saw their faces, I ended up throwing myself into the driver's seat and reversing my car and hightailing it out of there. I drove to about 20 minutes down the road. I crossed the river on a bridge and hid my car behind a bank near the other campers. It was well hidden from the main road. The campers were looking at me and wondering what was going on. I sat, I waited. Another 10 minutes passed by, and lo and behold, the truck drove by. The hunters were looking for me. I managed to wait another half an hour, and then drove up to the mountains, over to Boise and into safety. This is by far the creepiest and spookiest experience that I've ever had. This happened at the school I went in the Philippines, which was a local Catholic one, but not that kind of strict. To describe where it happened, my classroom that time was at the end of a hallway located at the first floor. It was also across our mini library, where our kind librarian sits behind the door. Besides that library were bathrooms for girls and boys. The girls' bathroom is bigger with 3 cubicles inside of it. The boys' one was just an entire bathroom without a cubicle. It's way back in 2003. I was in 3rd grade. It happened during those summery times. 2, 3 o'clock on an afternoon. We had an ongoing class at the time in that classroom when I excused myself to go to the bathroom. When I walked across the hallway and reached the girls' bathroom, just a brief description of how the bathroom looked like. When you enter, a big dirty scratchy mirror on the wall will welcome you. Beneath it was a clogged and dirty sink. Beside the sink were cubicles, 3 of them, made of soft aluminium material. The lock of the doors were broken. This is an important detail of the cubicle. So, when I entered the bathroom, I was the only one in the area. No other students inside the boys' bathroom or the other cubicles. All the doors of the cubicles were wide open. I am the usual scaredy cat girl, so I went inside the first cubicle. Since the locks were broken, I just held the door while peeing, so if anyone entered, they would know I was in there. I was finishing my business. A sudden gush of wind entered the bathroom and I felt someone, a presence, entered the bathroom. I waited for that someone to enter one of the cubicles, but nothing happened. I was clueless, and I didn't think it was a ghost at first. But I heard the faucet in the third cubicle opened and water was flowing. I, without thinking too much, peeped below the cubicles. There was no one, no feet, nothing, just water flowing. I freaked out too much, so I hurriedly fixed my uniform, and when I was trying to open the door, it wouldn't budge open. Remember, the lock was broken, so just a little touch will help it open, but it was not moving. I was so hysterical that I was punching the door so much that it had dents in it. I was screaming, crying, and really scared. I tried kicking the door, but it just won't move. I screamed louder. My throat was getting sore until my teacher and the librarian hurriedly went to me. They opened the door, mind you, without any force. I was dumbfounded, and they asked me what happened, and I told them everything. They just stared at each other and gave me a faint but worried laugh and helped me get back to class. It was the scariest feeling I ever felt because I felt helpless. I remember stories of other students seeing ghosts and such in school. Some say that the school was initially a rice plain where salvaged bodies were usually thrown. So I guess that can explain it all if it's true. 18 years have passed, and that memory is still clear as glass. I hope that will never happen to me again. I have a few stories left, but nothing beats this one. Hey, I'm Frankie Goss. Been a long time listener, and I've been contemplating on sending my stories in. I assure you these experiences are not fabricated and are 100% true as I remember them. I'm a 33-year-old man. I would like to share a series of paranormal experiences I had when I was 16 or 17 that really jump-started my hobby in ghost hunting and paranormal investigating. Since I was a kid, I was always into the paranormal as far as I can remember. I even have faint memories of earlier paranormal experiences when I was around 10 years old, such as seeing the Hat Man. Never even heard of the Hat Man phenomena until in my late 20s, so it could have been my imagination. I have also heard scratching from beneath my bed, which my mother shrugged off by saying it was the cats. But it couldn't have been the cats, for the cats she was talking about were outside. The scratches came directly beneath my bed. But the experiences I want to share now happened when in my mid-teens and were truly profound, totally unexplainable, and some were even frightening. This post will be long, so be ready to read for like 15 minutes. I was about 16 or 17 years old, living in a small town called Caledonia in the province of Ontario, which is in Canada, and these paranormal experiences happened around 2004. I had a daughter at a very young age, so while I went to school, I also worked on the side in a small restaurant that mostly sold pizza and breakfast, and business was usually slow. It was located on Argyle Street, right across from a bank and 10 or 15 feet away from the famous Caledonia Bridge. If you were to be driving into town, coming from the city of Hamilton, it would be on the left side of the road before the bridge. Its exact address was 12 Argyle Street, North Caledonia, Ontario. I scored the job from my friend Graham, who I went to elementary school with when I was younger. His mother owned the place. When I first started working there, I didn't feel anything bad or thought it was haunted, although I got an eerie feeling in the basement. But what basement doesn't give off an eerie feeling in an old building? I didn't think much of it. I worked there for a week or two before I experienced anything. And I did work alone in the beginning. Later on, an older girl named Lindsay, who I think was about 19 or older, started working with me, and shortly after that, things started happening. As I said earlier, business was usually slow. I spent most of my shifts watching DVD movies alone, or with Lindsay in the dining area. Now, before I describe the paranormal experiences I had there, I want to describe the layout of the restaurant. It was as follows. Picture it from topographic view like blueprints. Picture a square. At the bottom centre of the square is the front entrance. The middle of the square is the dining area, all tables and chairs. At the top centre of the square is the entrance into the kitchen. Now picture the top right of the square is the entrance to a hallway that extends 12 feet or so. So to verify, if you understand the description, if one was to come out of the kitchen, the hallway would be on their left, and if one were to enter the front entrance, the hallway would be on their right if they were walking past the dining area. Looking down the hallway, it has total 4 doors. 2 doors on the left. First was a male bathroom with 1 toilet and sink, and a female bathroom a few feet down the hall, also 1 toilet and sink. 1 door at the end of the hallway, which was a janitor's closet, and then 1 door on the right, which is literally directly across, in front of the male bathroom, which is the entrance to the basement. So when one comes out of the male bathroom, first thing they see is the basement door, and they would have to turn right to get back to the dining area. Basement door has a small padlock on it, and one would see the inside of an apartment door or house door to keep strangers out. Lindsay and I talked a lot since business was slow, and it didn't take long until we both discovered we have similar interests in the paranormal. One day at work, she told me about her passion in ghost hunting, and how she captures unexplained anomalies, taking pictures and videos of alleged haunted locations, one of which was the Blue Ghost Tunnel in St. Catharines, 30 to 45 minute drive from Caledonia. This intrigued me because I heard about that place on a TV show called Creepy Canada. I asked her to show me these pictures and videos, and one day she did. On another day at work, I saw her many pictures of orbs of different colours and pics of white mist that she claimed wasn't smoke or condensation viewed on her laptop. But what intrigued me the most was the VHS tape that she played me on the TV in the middle of the day in the summer. Cannot see their breath as they talk. To their surprise, the entire entrance to the tunnel and the tunnel itself is filled with thick white fog or mist, seen kinda twirling. As they enter the tunnel, one can see it's cold in there because one can see breath as they talk in the middle of a hot summer day. Can't say it was 100% paranormal, but it was bizarre. This influenced me to go there myself, which I did many times in the day and night, and I never experienced or saw any thick fog or mist during the day or night as seen on a video. But I did experience the capture of paranormal activity, which I'll save for other stories, which I have photos and videos of, including the first class EVPs. The reason why I'm telling you all this is because shortly after her showing me this and talking long hours about ghosts in dining room is when paranormal activity started happening in the restaurant. And looking back at it now, I think talking about it triggered it. I don't know. Now onto the first experience. Lindsay and I were working together and I had to take a leak, so I told her I'd be right back. So I walked down the hall like I did many times before and opened the male bathroom door on my left. I enter it, and as I enter, I go close to the door, observing the basement door directly in front of me, and it's closed and locked as usual. I close the door completely and turn to walk to the toilet 3 or 4 feet away from the door. Now I have my back turned to the door. I whip it out and start taking a leak. As I'm urinating, I hear the door open and become ajar behind me. I didn't know what to think because I thought it was Lindsay and was asking myself in millisecond thoughts, why would she do that if she knows I'm pissing? Maybe she wants to see my privates. Typical stupid thoughts of a teenage boy. I also thought maybe she's playing a joke, So I laughed at myself and finished my business and wanted to go to the dining room to ask her why she opened the door. So I proceed to walk towards the ajar door and I open it. To my surprise, I see the basement door is unlocked and wide open, and I can see down the stairs to the eerie basement. But it was closed not a few seconds ago, I say to myself. How didn't I hear the padlock unlock and the basement door open? I brush it off as Lindsay opened both doors, and maybe the stream of urine hitting the water distorted the noise. I quickly concluded and was certain Lindsay was playing a joke on me, because all of the intense ghost talks we've been having in the past couple of shifts. I calmly shut the basement door, locked the padlock, but I felt super uneasy. I proceed to walk to the dining area, and she's not there because she said she was going to make herself food. So I enter the kitchen door on my right after coming out of the hallway. I see her cooking herself something, and I ask her, "Did you open the bathroom door and basement door while I was using the restroom?" She replies kind of surprised, giggling, "No, why?" Then I got the biggest shivers down my neck, with fear coming over me, and I said, "Don't mess with me, Lindsay. Someone just turned the knob on the bathroom door while I was taking a leak and opened it a bit, and when I finished, I opened the door and the basement door in front of me was unlocked and wide open." She got a bit of fear in her facial expression and said, "No, I swear to God I was in the kitchen the whole time. Are you serious?" Asking me to verify that I'm not playing a joke on her. I felt like she was being sincere, but I was unsure of her sincerity. We both searched in the restaurant and found nobody. But now as I'm typing this, I remember we never checked the basement. Nothing else happened for the rest of the shift. Both of us were left thinking one is messing with the other. My next shift, I was supposed to work alone. I told my boss about the experience, and I told her I think it's haunted and I refuse to work alone. I thought she'd think I was crazy, but to my surprise she believed me, and with a sigh she said she knows it's haunted and didn't force me to work alone, so stayed with me on my shift, and later set out my shifts so I'd have someone with me. Most of the time it was with Lindsay, who worked with me. Like 95% of the time it was her. As time passed over the course of a few weeks, the basement door started to unlock and open on its own almost at least once every shift, and most of the time it would be open while Lindsay and I were not in the same room. So I lost the fear, became conditioned to it, and even started to suspect that perhaps it was Lindsay playing a joke on me all along. This is until one day it happened to me while we were in the same room. We both saw the basement door locked and closed 100%. We were both doing work in the kitchen. As we both finished in the kitchen and want to go watch a movie in the dining area, we exit the kitchen, and to our surprise, the basement door is unlocked and wide open. We both look at each other with fear, but a bit of excitement as well, because experiencing paranormal activity gives one a high, a rush of adrenaline, and makes one question reality, especially after confirming that it was indeed with no real explanation. I'm sure you and our listeners who have a go at ghost hunting and paranormal investigating, who have experienced live in the moment, know the feeling that I'm talking about. We both know that no one else is in the restaurant, and both know 100% the door was closed and padlocked. She expressed to me that she thought I was messing with her the whole time, and I tell her I thought the same about her. We both know that this is real. This is actually happening. A ghost is actually toying with us. We shut and locked the basement door and act like nothing happened. This time, the ghost is something it hasn't done yet in the weeks prior. It opened the door again and again. We closed and locked it each time that night, but it kept opening the door. We decided to take pictures in the basement. We captured white, blue and red orbs. After we took pics, the activity stopped. As I remember, we finished our shift and closed the restaurant. Our next couple of shifts, it got scarier and more intense. Not like horror movies, but the activity actually started to increase and become somewhat aggressive. I don't remember how many shifts this transpired over, but I'll tell them the best I can in the summary below. One time the basement door kept opening and we kept shutting it, but it wouldn't stop opening it. Kinda scared us but annoyed us more. So one day I got courage after it opened the door, and I stood at the top of the basement stairs and said to the ghost, "Listen, you've made your presence known, and we know you're here. Can you please stop opening the door? It's scaring and annoying us." After I said that, I shut the door and locked the door. What happened next scared the crap out of me. I was in the dining area, looking down the hall at the basement door. I literally look away for maybe 2 or 3 seconds, look back and it's open. Send shivers on my arms typing it. How did that door open without me hearing it? Can they mute sound? Can they pause time? Surely I would have heard the padlock and the knob turn, but I didn't even though. I was only like 7 feet away from the door. Out of all the experiences, this was one of the most profound ones that made me want to scientifically research the paranormal. Not only did I not hear sounds, but I don't even think 2 or 3 seconds is enough time to unlock and open that door. How did that door open so quick without making any noise? And the fact that I asked it to stop and it didn't frightened Lindsay and I. Almost as if it said F you through its actions. Lindsay decided to talk to it at the top of the stairs and shut and lock the door. To our surprise, it stopped for the rest of the shift after she told it to stop. I theorised it was Mal and didn't like me, but it liked Lindsay because she's a girl. I don't know, I was trying to make sense of why it listened to her and not me. Another time we were both in the kitchen, and when we both came out, and as usual, basement door open. But this time I felt an angry presence. When I entered the hallway to close the door, I heard noises and noticed all 4 doors were open. The Malmfield my bathroom doors, the janitor's closet door, and basement door are open. Upon further investigation, the noises I hear are usually tap water running in the washrooms and janitor's closet, and all sinks have hot water running, creating condensation in the bathrooms and closet. I shut off and closed all the doors. I was scared as hell. Then what happened next was profound. Lindsay and I walked into the kitchen, and the big jug of olive oil was moved into the middle of the kitchen within seconds of us exiting and re-entering the kitchen. How without any sound? Now that I'm older, I do not get as spooked as easily. Or should I say, I still get spooked, but got a lot more courage now. I usually run towards the activity and not run away from it, hoping to catch my experiences on camera so I can share them with the world. But 17-year-old me was not having it. I quit working there because the activity was getting super intense. Too bad I didn't set up IR cameras in the room overnight at the time. A couple of weeks after I quit, I later heard from my boss, or former boss, that it escalated to ripping the cupboard door off. I didn't talk to Lindsay for many years. I'm talking about well over 10 years, and my experiences became distant memories. I often wondered if what I experienced was real or not. One year, actually not too long ago, found me on Facebook and confirmed all my distant memories are real. She remembered everything I did. The restaurant eventually went out of business, and the building was vacant for years. Today the building is owned by a company called Seguin Engineering. I emailed them and explained who I was, and that in the past I've experienced paranormal activity there, and asked if staff experienced anything, and if I could do a professional scientific paranormal investigation there. They replied that no paranormal activity, and I cannot investigate. I hope you enjoyed my true ghost stories. I have many more ghost stories. Some of them I can even supply photos, videos, and ghosts for EVPs. Some of them I can even supply photos, videos, and EVPs. I also have other interesting stories such as close encounters with UFOs. One story I call the brightening dimmer light entity, and stories of creepy people of me running into a cult practicing dark occult rituals in the forest by the Hermigate in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Thanks for letting me share my story. I hope it gets to read on your channel. Sincerely, Frankie Goats. All stories have been narrated with the permission from the author. This is my first time posting here, or anywhere about this incident, so I apologise if details get a little bit confusing, but I'll try my best to make it as concise as possible. This happened a few months ago to my friends and I. We are university students in Cape Town, South Africa, so when we aren't trying to just get through the semester, we like to let our habits get the better of us and go out for drinks. On this night, we had just finished what felt like an extra long day at university, and decided to head to the bar about 5 minutes from campus for some much needed stress relief. The evening was going well, although a bit slow. It was enjoyable with everyone having a drink and getting a bit restless. So, me being one of the more outgoing ones in the group, I suggested that we head to the pool bar not far from where we were. Everyone agrees, and we go get our stuff. We all jump in the car and we get to the bar, but being a Thursday night, parking was scarce. I finally managed to find a spot about a block away from the bar, but in a secluded side street. I should also mention that this bar is in one of the sketchier parts of town, but it's normally quite safe due to the amount of nightlife associated with being so close to the university. We walked to the bar and no one really felt uneasy, nor did anything happen to make us feel that way, which was quite surprising. After a few hours of just some pool and just relaxing, we decided it was time to grab dinner before restaurants close, as being in South Africa means that most restaurants, even fast food, close really early, at around 7 to 8 pm to comply with the curfew. We decided to stop at the pizza place below the bar to grab some food before we all decided what the plan was to end the night. So, because our group was so large and the pizza place was so small, we decided to have those getting food go inside, while the others who didn't would just wait outside on the street. This was an easy decision, as the pizza place had a massive open window with built-on counter, so we could all talk to each other. This is where things started getting a little weird. We were waiting for our friends inside the pizza place to come out. This massive white van pulls up past us and stops. The driver wasn't an intimidating looking dude. He was skinny, looked to be about average height, and with shoulder long blonde hair. A pretty standard looking dude for the kind of area we were in. He calls me and asks if I think his van could fit in a parking spot just behind him. For perspective, this parking spot could probably fit like a small hatchback maybe. This dude is driving a full long size panel van. This makes me kinda uneasy, as I thought that as a driver of a car, you should know where your car can definitely not fit, and this was one of them. I explained to him that I don't think it was even worth attempting. He responded telling me that he has faith in his ability, and I should come and stand behind the van and direct him. This gives me major red flags, and after a few back and forths, he just pulls the emergency brake up and sits and stares at my friends and I for what felt like an eternity. Then he thanked us and drove off. This sparks my friends who come outside of the pizza place as they saw what happened and were very confused. We were all kind of weirded out, but think nothing of it, and everyone eats their pizza, and we try to decide what the plan is for the last hour or two we have before curfew cuts things short. Most of us decide that this is when the night's going to end, as we're all kind of weirded out by the guy in the van. A few others decided they were going to stay and just Uber home a little later in the evening. With our group number cut down to 4, we decided to walk back to the car and just head home. When we left the pizza place, a homeless person called us and was insisting we had nothing to worry about with the guy in the van, which didn't help with anyone's nerves. We then decided to head to the car, but as soon as we turned the corner to approach the side street where the car was parked, we see Van Man again. This time not quite so happy as he seemed in his encounter earlier. I made a cheeky comment about him finally finding a parking spot he could fit in while we were walking past each other, and he just stared at my friends and I, not breaking eye contact even when we passed him. I turned around to see if he was still looking. He was, but as we turned the corner of the side street with the car, I saw it and my heart sank. The van, horribly parked half on and half off the sidewalk, back door slightly open. Upon seeing this, I turn around and see Van Man is now walking towards us, but he said something that confused me at first, but I immediately made sense after. He said, "Hey, please just watch my car," which confused me, but when he said that, 4 men sat up from leaning on the wall next to it and began following us. My friends and I were slightly ahead of them, so we were trying to discuss the game plan, because it was obvious if we did nothing, something horrible was going to happen. My friends start walking faster, and I remain at the same speed, frantically searching my pockets for my car keys, all while shouting at my friends to wait up and asking what the rush was. All in hopes that the guy behind us, who was gaining on us, were oblivious to us knowing that they had sinister intentions. As soon as the car came into view, we booked it, jumped in and drove away, but we were only seconds from not being that lucky. After locking the car doors, I saw the men surrounding the car. I managed to get us out, and looking back in the mirror, I saw the 5th man by the van at the bottom of the street. I still have no idea what their intentions were that night, if it was to rob us, or beat us up, or worse. I don't really like to think about how lucky we were that night. I asked that when you're out, no matter how innocent an interaction with someone can seem, always pay attention to the little things. So to the man in the van, my friends and I saw that night, can we please not meet again? Thanks very much for allowing me to write your story. I really think it gets across a good message that you always need to be aware of your surroundings, especially when alcohol is involved, because you can put yourself in a lot more dangerous situations and you're not really as with it, and you're sort of, your natural instincts are impaired sometimes. So I really think this story really highlights that. So as a little message to everyone who's listening to this, make sure you're careful when you go out drinking. Even if you're with people, things can still happen. So thanks a lot. I live in a small town. You blink and you miss it. The best we can boast about is a single stop sign and a gas station, which we only have because the nearby highway. Any actual semblance of a town is 25 minutes away, so when things get scary out here, it's amplified. The occasional homeless person is no big deal. They're often drifting through. Drug addicts run rampant and will steal everything they can from your house, but it's normal out here. However, what happened a few years ago certainly wasn't normal. Originally, I was dead asleep in my bed. I only woke up because it was burning hot in my room, but it was summertime and not much I could do. I just remember tossing and turning until I got a creepy feeling that fell into the pit of my stomach. I glanced over to the bathroom door that was open with the light on. Everything was normal. I left the light on so I wouldn't trip and die if I had to pee in the middle of the night. Next, I glanced at the window directly across from my bed. I had no curtains, but I did have a really crappy set of blinds. Part of the blinds are broken from wear and tear, and the crappy AC output beneath it would make them move back and forth, so you'd get a glimpse of outside every so often. The yard light was still going, but what made me stop was that outline at my window. A figure of someone was directly at my window, almost like it was waiting for the blinds to move to watch me. I didn't have an imagination as a child. That has been trained out of me. But the sight was enough to pour every horror film into my head at that moment. I squeezed my eyes shut and pulled my blankets over my head and slept in a cloth oven that night. By morning time, the figure was gone. I remember running to my mum's room on the verge of tears in the morning, telling her what happened. She laughed at me like I was an idiot and told me it was probably just a stray cat that had climbed up here for the odd reason or another. I almost believed her, since my window was pretty high off the ground, but something didn't sit right. Late that day, when we were doing yard work, I glanced over at my window and saw one of our patio chairs had been pushed up to it. I pointed out to my mum, who proceeded to chew me out. "That's how the cat probably got up there, you moron. Stop leaving furniture everywhere." But I hadn't moved it. It was heavy enough that I'd struggled with it. So we moved it back, and so began a pattern. At night I'd see the figure, complain to my mum, and we'd find a chair moved back every single morning. This went on for weeks. My mother stopped caring about my concerns, until one morning we saw where the outside screen of my window had been sliced open. I still remember her shaking her head and complaining about those damn stray cats that we still had yet to see. I could tell that she was unnerved by the development. I couldn't handle it anymore, and I opted to sleep in the living room that night. The only problem was our kitchen and living room were connected, which meant there were always several windows. The first night of my move went well, despite my back hurting from the couch. I avoided my room like the plague. It wasn't until 4 days later we ran into an issue. I woke up and glanced at the clock above the fireplace. It read a little past 3 a.m. I couldn't realise why I had woken up until it happened again. There was a beam of light shining in from the kitchen window, almost like someone was shining a flashlight in. I saw it trace along the walls and land on the love seat across from the couch I was on. I was mortified. When I told my mum, she continued to laugh at me. I gave in and decided I would sleep in my dad's room, even though it had a gigantic window. He slept in the recliner with a huge TV, so I felt more safe having someone around. The yard light was directly outside my window anyway. It seemed foolproof. That was until I woke up out of habitual fear and watched through the window across the bed. Everything seemed normal as the time dragged on, and I felt like a moron. Maybe my mum was right. That was until I saw a lone figure coming out of the woods by the backyard shed, walk directly under the light and head into the patio furniture like he'd been here plenty of times before. I still remember the large build of the man, and the confidence like one who lived here and wasn't creeping around my yard in the dead of night. I just remember listening to the TV until I fell asleep again, hoping to get another glimpse. My dad would have been pissed if I had woken him up. He was grumpy on a good day and terrifying on a bad day. I didn't feel like risking it until I had solid proof because I was so scared. The next morning, my mum chewed me out again for the patio furniture, which was routine almost a month later. But this time something new happened. She demanded I stop playing in the toolboxes of the garage. A bunch of tools had been taken out and left on our doorstep. Screwdrivers, a large hammer, flashlights, etc. It wasn't me. I begged my mum and pleaded with her just to stay out with me one night. We couldn't close our garage because it was an open carport, and I wasn't going to get my ass beaten for touching tools because of someone else. It was driving me mad. Finally she agreed. That night we would stay awake in the living room. Finally I fell asleep before my mum did, but I remember her waking me up in a panic. She pointed to the window that overlooked our garage. We could see the top of someone's head as they walked back and forth. There was a sound of someone placing metal tools down on brick steps, as if they were trying to be quiet but couldn't fully muffle it. She whispered for me to go wake my dad. My dad was angry, having been woken up in the middle of the night by his frantic daughter. He grabbed his pistol and headed out the back door, towards the front of the house where the garage was located. We heard my dad screaming and someone dropping tools, then the shot of a gun twice. The frantic footsteps pounding out of the garage felt like they were coming from my chest. My mum peeked through the window and opened the door, and my dad stumbled in. He had missed both shots because of his unstable aim, but told us that there was a man crouching at our front door, looking at our door handle. None of us slept that night, and in the morning, the law from the closest town arrived. They didn't do much besides ask if anything had been stolen, for a description of the man, and then told us to install cameras. That was it. They said the guy was probably just looking for something easy to steal for the quick money. If that had been the case, why hadn't he stolen the tools, the generator, the welder, or broken into any of the vehicles just sitting in the garage? We finally set up a hunting trail cameras around the house, but nothing has happened since. Coming home from college for holidays, I still have nightmares about the incident years later when I sleep in my own bed. I don't know what he was looking for, or why he did the things he did. Whatever the case may be, man at the window, let's not meet. When I was much younger, I used to go out and party almost every night. I couldn't stand staying at home, and being out in town felt so good, especially with friends. We would go bar hopping, and one of the pubs that we frequented was called Poppin'. We would get wasted, as the alcohol here is dirt cheap due to the island being duty free. So imagine being teenagers and being wasted most of the time. Not a good combination, and bad things are bound to happen. I grew up in this island, and I know many of the townsfolk here. It's a relatively safe place to be since it's just a small island. You could literally leave your car doors unlocked and no one would steal your car. Hence why there's nowhere to run, and the only way out the island is either by flight, speedboat or Roro ferry. So back to the story. I was out one night with my buddies as usual, having some drinks at a local pub. We were having a great time and listened to a live band that was playing at the time. It was crowded inside and people were drinking and dancing. Me and my friends were too. My friend's name is Steve. See, Steve and I were close, and I knew him since he was in high school. At the time, I was in my early 20s. We were good friends, and while I was at the pub, suddenly he called me to go outside and accompany him to go see someone. Curiously, I followed him outside, and when I asked him, he told me just to back him up, and that the guy we were going to meet was apparently dating Steve's younger sister, and Steve didn't like that one bit since his sister was still in high school. So when he came, Steve warned him not to disturb his sister and to stay away from her, which I thought was fair. Then, Being the hero wannabe, I butted in and started telling him the same thing, and he wasn't taking it one bit from me and got really pissed instead. He said that I was going to regret opening my mouth and just walked off. We went back inside and I started calling friends, telling them that a fight was going down, as I knew that guy was going to call his friends as well. About 15 minutes passed and I got called out, and this guy had brought about 15 to 20 guys and they surrounded me and Steve. And then this guy's uncle pulled me aside and slapped me, saying that I was a dead man. I tried to fight back, but then he did something that really shook me up. He brandished an army knife from his back jeans. The kind that has those teeth-like texture at the back end of the blade. The kind that could literally be used to pull your guts out. Yeah, that kind of knife. I froze and didn't know what to do while he was holding onto my t-shirt with one hand and had the knife in the other. Immediately, I thought to myself, oh shit, I'm gonna get stabbed and probably killed tonight. So much was racing through my mind that I couldn't think. According to Steve, most of these guys had weapons on them. One of them even broke beer bottles and was holding up the sharp broken glass ready to hurt us. Then out of nowhere, my brother-in-law came screaming, saying that he was a cop and that backup was coming if they didn't settle it there and then. My brother-in-law is a big guy that stands almost 6 feet tall, so I knew that they believed that he was a cop, and it started to settle down. The guy that was dating Steve's sister still wasn't satisfied and wanted to fight me one-on-one. At first I denied him, but after he kept insisting I said yes. Luckily, he didn't go through with it, and we just settled it with a handshake. He told me not to go after his uncle and wanted to really settle. I agreed, since this was such a small island and you would meet the same people all the time. I went home after that, as I had enough of the night, and that incident shook the alcohol out of me and sobered me up. I still saw that guy and his knife-wielding uncle a couple of times when I was out in the town, but we just nodded to each other and never had any problems with each other since. So that's my story of the time I almost got stabbed and probably killed by someone's random uncle, just for butting in their conversation, which was none of my business in the first place. And that's the reason why I no longer favour going out to drink till you can't think straight. I think it's better to stick to herbs instead and just chill at home. When my friend and I met the woman we now refer to as the Banshee, it was about 10 at night. We were walking back from a milk tea place, and we were maybe at mile 5 of a 6-mile total round trip, almost home. We were walking on a long stretch of sidewalk next to a wide road that is busy during the day, but almost empty at night. A little background: my hiking buddy and I sometimes go for long walks through the town at night, when we can't get to the trails during the day. It's dark, but our route goes through a fairly safe and blend of residential and shopping areas. Usually we head to some sort of late night restaurant or food truck. We walk, stop for food and drink, and then head back. We wear glowing vests, battery powered, and reflective stuff to make sure traffic sees us, because we've had some too close encounters with distracted drivers. We've also had a few encounters with strange people. She didn't start making strange noises at first. It was a long stretch of straight sidewalk, and we had seen her coming for a long time before she started that. No one else was out walking along the road at this hour. There were plenty of street lights. She'd appear under the lights, then disappear in some shadow of bushes and trees, and then reappear under the lights. We were glowing in our vests, in addition to the street lights, so she'd have to have seen us coming. I figured she just worked at one of the shops or restaurants nearby and was getting done with closing up. I figured she was just trying to get home, just like we were, until she started making these random noises. The first sound was like an odd hacking noise, like she was attempting to clear her throat as noisily as possible. But this was just the warm-up. The sound then changed to something like a cross between a crow cawing and a small dog's bark. Rendering text is hard, but the closest thing might be a growl. So we kept walking towards her, watching and listening, thinking perhaps she had a disability or some other issue. She looked decently dressed, and she walked steadily and deliberately, not like someone on drugs. If not her noises, she seemed completely normal. Then she made these loud but low-pitched groaning sounds, something like a mrrr sort of noise. It had us briefly making zombie movie references, joking a bit, but we speculated if she was maybe talking to someone on earbuds or making an attempt at singing something. But it got weirder as she added some higher pitched screechy sounds, something like an angry cockatoo might make, like a craw craw sound. At this point, she's less than 2 blocks away, and she's rotating through these bizarre sounds, with sort of pauses of silence between. She looks like someone's cute little grandma. She didn't look like anything you'd expect to see making those sounds. She's wearing an old-fashioned thick skirt, a cardigan, and chunky-looking shoes, carrying a single cloth shopping bag. Her hair is a short, curly old lady perm. She looks adorable. She sounds insane. Grah. Crow bark sound. Mram. Zombie noise. Caw, caw. Cockatoo shriek sound. She's getting closer. Her bizarre noises are getting more unsettling, and I realise I can't see what she's clutching in her hand. The one that doesn't have the shopping bag. She looks harmless, but the sounds are too weird. My buddy looks at me and asked, "Time to cross?" Echoing my own thoughts. We didn't want a confrontation with this lady. I nodded, but just before we step out into the road, the lady seemed to have the same idea. She suddenly veered off to the sidewalk and went into the road, making a steady diagonal line towards the other side. There was no traffic on the road at this point, so I wasn't worried. I relaxed a bit, continuing on. I figured she was avoiding us, just like we were about to avoid her. But just as we started to pass her, she suddenly screamed and rushed at us in the middle of the road. Her mouth was wide open as she charged at us, just shrieking. We stepped quickly apart, and her abrupt rush took her right between us, just shriek wailing that horrible sound. It sounded like it would hurt her throat. Banshee-like is the only word I have for it. We were several feet apart, both braced for her to come back and do something, but instead she veered again and went down the sidewalk the way she had originally been going. As she walked away, she kept looking back at us and keeping up short bursts of shrieking banshee noise, stopping to take breaths. As she got further away from us, she started caw barking at us again. We stood there for a while, just silently watching until she was a good long ways down the sidewalk, with her very strange crow barking fading into the distance. I still have no idea what was wrong with her. Did our light somehow trigger an episode? I hope she's okay. She seemed to know where she was going. But Banshee Lady, let's not meet again. When I was younger, somewhere between 5 or 8, a distant family member who was supposedly well loved died, and one of his last wishes was for the final celebration of his life to take place in his childhood home. His son, DJ, decided to respect these wishes and contacted the current owner of the house to ask if a small gathering could be hosted on the premises and entirely outside. As far as DJ and everyone else could tell, the homeowner was kind and understanding and agreed, offering to help out, being clear on boundaries and such. Fast forward to the event itself. My family's arriving. I'd say around 3 in the afternoon, and I have this horrible, anxious feeling deep in my stomach that I can't shake. I mentioned it to my mum, saying something silly that I probably heard on TV about my gut feeling, and my parents shrug it off and tell me it's fine and to come on. I trust my parents, so I step out of the car, all dressed in a cute dress and layered in cheap plastic jewellery, I think Mardi Gras beads, that I proudly chose myself to appear formal for the occasion. My mum, my dad and I all walk out towards the backyard, aiming towards the right hand side of the house, as the inside was off limits due to being private property, when a man busts out the front door holding a bat. This is not just a normal baseball bat intended to occupy the children. No, this man busts out of his front door, screams at everyone, talks about how horrible we are and how our family's disgusting, all while gripping a beat up baseball bat full of nails. Immediately I panic, and my fight or flight, in this case flight, kicks in, and I make a beeline to our old blue car. I only just got dragged out by my dad. I jump in and slam the door behind me, panicking with tear-blurred vision and an incredibly upset stomach. When I look out the window and see the crazy man who made a quick decision to target an elementary age girl as he took a swing at the car and hit the area above the back tyre, creating a loud ringing and dent. My dad, who took what felt like 5 hours but was probably around 10 seconds, pushes the man away and jumps in, my mum following behind quickly. We sped away from the house and back home, not mentioning a thing except for how proud of me they were for running, and that they'll listen to me if I ever have that horrible gut feeling that something's wrong again. Though both my mum and dad kept shooting quick glances behind the car and whispering to each other. My family never discussed the event with me around again, but when I asked my mum what happened years later, she explained that the man had decided to do a Google search on DJ and found his estranged criminal brother's record on Google, and decided that this was evidence enough to attack a family during a wake with a nailed baseball bat. This happened way back in 2013 when I was in junior college. It was our college's organisation's annual art camp. For a short description, we're all in fine arts department, and our organisation holds this art camp where there are seminars from our professors and mentors, and all in all team building activities. It's usually set in recreational venues. As I said earlier, I was in junior, and it was our year as officers of the said organisation, so we were the ones who chose the venue, planned the games, itineraries and such. To give a brief description of the place, it's in a rural area around Laguna in the Philippines. It's a huge recreational area with hanging bridge leading to the campfire, pool area and obstacle courses. In the middle of the venue, there's a huge open space function hall where the seminars were held. Our cabins were hidden by trees located far behind the hall. The first cabin was for mentors and profs, the second was for the girls in my year and co-officers, and the third was for the sophomores and freshmen. The fourth was for the guys in my year and some freshmen, and the last 2 cabins were occupied by the higher year students. On the right side of the function hall, there's an outdoor lounge area with life-size chessball games. If you walk straight further, there's the obstacle course area. Further from it was the pool and foresty area where the campfire and hanging bridge was located. This particular story was experienced by my classmate. It was late at night, around 8 PM. Our scheduled seminar was already finished, and everyone was done with their dinner. Some of the students were chilling in the patio of their cabin, some were walking around, and us, the officers, were busy with planning tomorrow's activities. The guys, we're going to call them Gab, Wally, Kev, Alan and Hero, were chatting and chilling inside their cabin. One of them decided to explore around. Hero told them to go and play the chessboard area. They decided to go out except for one. Gab approached Frank, a freshman, dozing at the top bunk. He asked if he wanted to come with them, but Frank was sleepy and he said no to them, turning his back against them. Before leaving, Gab asked Frank if it's alright to borrow his slippers because he had none, and Frank signalled okay. So the 5 guys were heading out the cabin, fooling around and laughing. They looked around and saw students slowly heading to each cabin to rest. They were almost a few yards from the chessboard when Gab noticed someone was walking parallel to them. The guy was heading to a large old coconut tree adjacent to the chessboard area. He was confused and stopped walking. Wally, Kevin, Alan and Hero noticed the walking guy as well. It was already dark around with minimal lights far from them. Gab tried to rub his eyes and recognised the walking guy. It was Frank. They all shouted, "Frank, come here!" Hero realised Frank stopped walking and turned to them. No expression at all. Alan was confused as well and asked if it was really Frank. Gab realised something creepy and faced the guys. "How could it be Frank when I'm wearing his only slippers?" he mumbled nervously. They all looked at the guy they were calling earlier and noticed it continued walking, and then suddenly disappeared behind. the old coconut tree. The guys collectively gasped, run, and shouted loudly back to their cabin. When we reached their door, Wally opened it to find Frank was sleeping deeply with his headphones on. They woke him up and slapped him softly and asked if he's okay or if he walked outside. Frank rubbing his eyes open, saying no confusedly. The 5 guys got so scared they tried to outrun each other heading to the cabin to tell us what happened. I was so scared but not actually surprised, since I felt creepy around the area during night time. It felt really strange and off. I've had my experience the night before, but not sure if it was paranormal. I awake only at that time. It was 2 AM, and I hear giggling around the cabin, like kids running around and chasing each other. I also noticed silhouettes walking past our screen door, though I personally tried to dismiss it and think of it as some of the students were still awake and fooling around outside, but I was unable to sleep until 5 AM. I believe that place had ghosts and elements in it, as per the account of some of the students as well. You can easily tell if there's something creepy in a place just by the feels it gives off. My high school cross-country team used to run practices in the wooded trails along the river a few times a week. We were usually a pack of 10 to 20 girls, and it was always around 4 PM, so no one thought of it as being particularly dangerous. Most of the people you'd encounter in the woods were either runners, kids or dog walkers. One afternoon, we were only about a group of 6. After running out a mile or two, we came across this big, out-of-service arc-shaped water feature we frequently passed on our runs. It was basically a giant hole cut out of a ravine that opened up into a dark tunnel. The inside of the dark tunnel was pitch black. You couldn't see a thing, even in the late afternoon light. We happened to slow down slightly as we passed the tunnel because someone needed to adjust their shoe or something. Someone called out to us from the top of the arc. It was this shabby, dirty looking man. He wasn't obviously homeless looking, but he might have been. He told us that he was trying to get a fire going in the tunnel and asked if we could go check if it was burning by going into the tunnel and looking around. For obvious reasons, this made no sense. We were sheltered, friendly and naive. One girl, Kate, said sure and started walking towards the tunnel opening. I got that sinking feeling that something was wrong, which only got worse as I noticed the guy was shifting around with something in his pocket. I called out to Kate, telling her to come back just before she reached the mouth of the tunnel. I got everyone running again, picking up the pace this time. We bickered over whether or not we were being paranoid as we finished our run. When we completed the loop and passed the tunnel again, the guy was gone. I hate to think of what could have awaited us in the tunnel. Obviously there was no fire burning inside. We would have seen it from where we were. Even if the guy hadn't succeeded in starting this fire, there was no reason to be standing away from it, waiting at the top of the tunnel. Okay, this happened probably around 2002. I moved to Belfast from London, and I would have been like 11. I'm 30 now. Anyway, I lived in a new area. A lot of houses, etc. were being built, and they were all massive and beautiful houses, despite being a terrible area I thankfully no longer live in. I'm with a friend called Dave. We're looking for my sister, and we go around the corner from my house, down where they are building a bunch of houses. It's pretty dark. I'd probably say about 10 or 11 PM. I don't really remember why we were actually looking for my sister. I don't even think she was around. Anyway, we're walking past houses that look pretty much finished. We're chatting, and a guy randomly shows up out of the blue behind us, grabs a hold of me. Dave, by this stage, is batshit petrified, and runs away crying and climbs over a fence. Completely ditches me. This guy is very casual, despite being creepy, and I'm not as freaked out as I should be. I assume he's a provi, which is someone who watches the streets in West Belfast. He's got a hold of me, and it's like when you've been caught in a place you shouldn't be in. I expect him just to be like, you shouldn't be here at night whilst we're patrolling the streets, etc. But suddenly we go to a house which isn't completely built yet, and no one lives in it. Well, I think. I'm literally standing inside this basement looking house whilst he's outside phoning the cops. I assume he's fake calling the cops. The conversation sounds fake, and he just sounds like he's trying to scare me, and he is. I get really freaked out now though, because upstairs there's like this constant tapping sound, and it can't be a builder by himself at like 11 PM surely. It sounds like someone's locked in something trying to get out. That scared me. It was the speed of the sound, as if they knew I was in the house. It sounded like they were trapped upstairs or something. Suddenly he's off the phone and he's like, "Okay, the cops are coming to your house soon, leave now." I'm thinking, nah, not really. I didn't give you my address, but at the same time I was freaking out because maybe this guy knows the streets and where I live. So that entire night I was just like looking out my window hoping no cops would come. They didn't in the end, and obviously did all of this just to scare me. But why? This situation for me is scary because a guy randomly grabbing a hold of you in the street in pitch black darkness is freaky, regardless of whether or not it's a building site. And I probably shouldn't have been there. He could have put me in a room and locked the door, had someone torture me or something. I've always wondered, like, why was he there? What was he doing? Afterwards, I was scared to go out at night in the area unless I had someone with me. Truth be told, there are a lot of issues in the area, and I'm guessing that guy and a bunch of other guys were acting like undercover cops since they weren't usually comfortable coming to where I lived, since they'd usually get bricked. It comes from the troubles. Looking back though, I think the entrance was blocked off, and we weren't actually allowed in there. Considering the situation, I was actually pretty calm compared to my friend, and I have terrible anxiety. I think I just assumed that this guy wasn't bad, but again, on any given day, he could have been bad. I appreciate the feedback, guys, considering this is my first story on here. For me, because the guy showed up, and being in the house, etc., things happened for the sake of 5 to 7 minutes. It was hard to fully digest what was going on, and reminded me a little bit of the film Audition. Obviously, nowhere near as freaky, but the sound upstairs was similar to the guy in the scene from the audition. If you've watched the film, you'll know what I mean. Hello everyone, this is the part of the video where there's no more stories, so if you're only here for the stories, then there's plenty of other horror narrators out there, and I also have more stories on my channel, so if you want to hear more of me or anyone else, then you can. I don't know what to say here, but yeah, I actually uploaded this video yesterday. So, well, the thing is, I uploaded this yesterday, right? But I didn't put a little chat at the end, and I felt bad because I'm going to be gone for a week soon, so I thought I'll just let you know what's going on. I am going away soon. Gone for a week. So that's what's happening. So I'm not going to be able to upload obviously when I'm away. But I'm going to try and leave you with something if I have time. Also, well, that's the main thing I actually wanted to say, to be honest with you, because I don't want you to wonder where I've gone or anything, or if I've left you behind, because I haven't. But no, I wouldn't do that. Also, I just want to say thanks for all the support you guys have given me recently. Like, especially on my recent videos, you've been very, very supportive of me, and you've always, I've got such a nice crowd on my channel now, so I really appreciate that, because it's really nice to come here and know that I've got all of yous just being nice and sitting there talking to me, you know. And I like hearing about your lives. I get to, you know, have that interaction with you. So hopefully we can keep this going. What else did I want to talk about? If you hear me eating or anything, I'm eating some chocolate digestive biscuits. I've got the Miss Molly's ones. They're about 30p and they're really good. But yeah, I've also got a Lucozade. Oh yeah, and yeah. So anyway, what have you guys been up to? Like, anything interesting happened in your lives or not? I'm at the point where I just feel, you know, when sometimes you need to break the mold, do something different. That's the point I'm at the moment. Like, I just need to do something a little bit different. No, I've been doing the same stuff over and over and over again, and sometimes you just need to... Lewis Hamilton whizzing past me there. Sorry if you can hear everything in the background. It's I think it's a school holiday still, so there's like little kids running around and all that sort of thing, and cars always go like rapid down my street. It's like fucking Gran Turismo going down my road. So if you can hear anything, it's just, yeah, sorry. Hopefully you can hear this because I'm sitting a bit further away from my mic this time. I normally hold it, but I'm not holding it this time, so it's probably not very loud. But if it isn't, then I'll know when I go to put this into the video anyway. But yeah, I wanted just to put something else out there. Oh, this is what I wanted to do. I want to narrate a story, but one of my granddad's stories, but like one that he's told me before. Now I'm going to explain the story briefly here, but I might make a whole separate video about it because it's a very interesting story. So my granddad is almost 86, and I see him a lot, and we got on really well and everything, and basically he was born, because of he's 86, he was young, like 8, 9, 10 years old during World War II. So he's got, and where we live was a big target for Germans. So he's got some really interesting war stories that are actually like, sometimes he talks a right load of waffle, which is quite funny, but other times he's got these really interesting stories, and I feel like, why did you not tell me this in the past? Why are you telling me about the time you stole some potatoes from the fields when you were young, or nicked someone's chicken for a day? Like, why are you telling me this when you could have been telling me these really interesting war stories? But it's still, I love them still. I think they're funny anyway. But alright, so one story he told me before, which I love this one, is this is the one I'm going to make into a video, I think, but in more detail. It's basically when my granddad was about 8, 9 or 10 years old. It was around that sort of age in World War II. In England, obviously, we were getting bombed by the Germans, so we had the Blitz, where everyone turned off their lights at night so the Germans couldn't see what they were bombing. So basically, there was an air raid siren that went off, and my granddad was out with his friend and his friend's mum, and like just at their house, which was just down the end of his road. So the air raid siren went off, and my granddad's mum always said to him, if the air raid siren goes off and you're out, you have to come back here. Like, you can't go anywhere else, you've got to come back here. And my granddad's friend and his mum were saying to him, like, come into our shelter now quickly. And my granddad said, no, like, I've got to go home, even though they were trying to convince him to stay in their shelter. So he ran home and went into his own shelter, and obviously there was an air raid, and obviously bombs being dropped on the area. And when the bombing stopped, the next day he found out that his friend and his friend's mum's shelter was bombed, and they both died. So that's a very, like, you know, for me that story is still crazy, because if that had happened, then I wouldn't be here. You know, if he hadn't ran back to his own shelter at his house, then he wouldn't have been here now, which I think's crazy. Like, just, I love hearing stories like that, like wartime. You think like how much better we've got it nowadays, because when he tells me these war stories, you think, well, the things people moan about today, you know, sometimes you think, you know. Also, there's, I might even try and do like an interview or something with him, my granddad. Is that something you guys would like to see? Because I would do an interview with my granddad if I could, if he wanted to. I mean, he wouldn't have a clue why I was doing it, but I'll tell him, obviously, but he wouldn't understand YouTube and all that. He doesn't have internet or anything like that. But if he wants to, then yeah, we'll give it a go. Also, another story I've got from World War II is him and his friends were, like, a German airplane was crashing, basically. It was coming down, and as it was like crashing, it was coming towards them, and the pilot was firing at them, him and his friends in the street, like kids in the street, as he was coming down, and all the bullets just went past them and like skimmed the floor past them and everything, and then crashed, and then obviously the pilot died. But you can't imagine that happen nowadays. You just can't imagine that happening. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy, these sort of stories. Like, kids don't get shot at like that nowadays, and like, you know what I mean? You can't imagine it, really. But yeah, I really enjoy wartime stories. If any of you have got any good wartime stories, then like from your family, actually, if you guys have got World War II stories or World War One or anything like that, Vietnam War stories from your family members, and obviously they're okay with it being narrated if the story is written out, obviously, then send them to my email. I'll put my email in the description of this video. So it's mrguy97@outlook.com. So if you want to send me like one like that, or even your own scary story, then please do, because I'd love to do like World War II stories. Actually, that's a decent idea. That I'd love to do that, like true World War II stories, like the stories I'm doing now, but from the 1940s, and yeah, I'd love that. I'm very interested in like war, and like I'm really interested in World War II. I think because especially where I live, there was so much history about, so much happened during World War II. Like the houses, like I'm looking at now, the houses just behind my house were blown up during World War II. And my house that I live in now actually survived World War II. It wasn't blown up, but the ones literally down the road there were all, that whole road was blown up. I've still got like little airfield bunkers and stuff near my house too. I've got like World War II little fortress things from the war, and that's still in my house, like near my house. We've still got some like cool things around here. The fields just behind my house were for they had German prisoners of war working on the fields behind my house, because my nan used to go up there sometimes. Like my nan's the same age as my granddad, and she used to try and talk to some of the prisoners when she was like 8, 7 as well. So yeah, I find it interesting. She used to tell us about like some of them were quite nice, and used to like give them sweets and whatever, and try and talk to them, but others were horrible and try and like spit on them and whatever. Like, it's just, you know, there's a lot of war history where I live. Actually, I find it all very interesting. Like, I just can't imagine living through like where I live now being attacked, like under attack from like Germany or wherever. You know, so let me know what if you've got any interesting war stories. Actually, I know I've got some German listeners too. So if you've got any like war stories about your family members, just let me know them, because I'm interested in it. Like, even if it's just not for me to narrate, even if it's just an interesting one from the German perspective, you know, that would be interesting. Like anywhere that was raided, like from your grandparents' perspective or whatever they saw, you know. I just find it interesting. I know that my granddad's brother was a German prisoner of war. I think it was German or Japanese. I think he was a German prisoner of war. His other brother was a paratrooper. I know my great granddad, I think, was at D-Day. I don't know what beach he went on, but I know he was at D-Day. Like I've got a lot of like Navy and Army history in my family. Like my granddad was in the Navy. Like not that granddad I'm talking about now, my other granddad was in the Navy, and he was in the Korean War. And he actually saw the when they used to test. Well, there's like a bit of a conspiracy. I spoke about it in a video before. It's like a bit of a conspiracy. It's like the ships that were like surrounding the Christmas Islands. They used to test nuclear bombs there, and they would literally just tell them to turn their back on the ash as it came in. So they'd be like really close to this bomb going off, see like the mushroom cloud, and just turn their back on the ash as it came over them. And the majority of those people died of cancer. Like my granddad died of cancer. Like a lot of them got like leukemia and brain tumours. And I think my granddad was the oldest surviving out of all of them, or one of two. And he died when he was about 76, 77. Like he was still quite young, considering how old people live. You know, like that's. And there's a bit of like a conspiracy that it was like they wanted to see the long-term effects of radiation on people, and like the radiation exposure on like the soldiers, which is it's just like a bit of a conspiracy. And I think people have been paid out from what happened, but yeah, that's my granddad. I remember him telling me about like when he saw the atom bombs going off on the ships, like when he was like watching from the ships and that. But yeah, like there's another story I've heard about that person I was talking about there, my granddad. His dad was was in the Navy too, and he got his boat got sunk. He was on multiple boats that got sunk by and he said I remember him saying about a story from when I don't remember this. I've been told this story. He was picking something up in I think it's the coal room or something like that in the bottom of a boat, and he bent down to pick something up, and a torpedo went through his boat and out the other side of it, and obviously they all had to, and he went over the top of him as he bent down, and he had to try, and obviously they all got out and escaped and got rescued. But yeah, I just really enjoy listening to these sort of stories. Now, I might make a video about these stories. Like this is just obviously a brief overview of it, but it's something that I find very, very interesting, you know. But tell me what you guys think, because I'm fascinated by like wartime things. Like there's a lot of and in England in the past, like you used to have to go on what's it called? National service. Yeah, national service I think it's called. And so you had to go into the army. So that's why my granddad, who I was talking about with the bomb in World War II, he had to go to Benghazi, but he said he was driving the ambulances, but he's a proper wimp, my granddad. So it's quite funny. He was telling us about like how the people used to tell him that about all these, like because there was all, I think they were Arabic. They used to speak Arabic, the people out there, and he'd tell them about how the people out there would like conspire against you, and then like when you're in this little outpost area, like on patrol, they would come up and cut your throat. And I remember he said he heard like he was on his own at night as well, and he heard footsteps like, and then just like slowly every once in a while he'd hear, and he said he was terrified. So he I think he said he picked up a shovel or something. He picked something up off the ground and went to the door, and then something put his head through, and he whacked it with this shovel. And it was a donkey, it was a little old donkey, and apparently it made like a weird noise and just ran off. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's just quite funny. But yeah, I'm gonna probably do something about World War II stories and war stories in general. But so if you guys have any war stories you want to tell me, then, or want me to like properly narrate, then send them to my email, because I will definitely read them. Just make sure the spelling's good, and you know, as good as you can get it. Punctuation and grammar is as good as you can get it, because it just makes it a lot easier to read, you know. But yeah, I'll probably end this soon, so I think I've been talking for like 20 minutes now. I'm not actually too sure. 15-20 minutes maybe. But yeah, I'll leave yous be. But yeah, alright, I'll speak to you guys in a bit, and let me know what you guys have been up to, because I'm genuinely interested in what you guys have all been up to. You know, I'm just going to talk for longer, fuck it. Yeah, what can I talk about? The thing is, I like talking about things, but obviously you don't want to be too... I'm not going to be telling you me bloody address and all that stuff, but me personal details, bloody credit card and debit card number, but I like to get to know you on a more personal level. Do you know what I mean? Like, we still talk personally about bloody telling the world about everything about it. Cause you've got to keep a bit to yourself, haven't you? You can't tell everyone everything. I think anyway. Personally, I think so. Like you don't want to be a complete open book, in my opinion. I think you need to have that little bit of reserve about yourself. So, obviously, don't say anything that you don't want me or anyone else to see, but it's nice to know what you guys have all been up to and how you are, and, because I think, sometimes I see in the comments, like, you guys, like, talk to each other and that, and it's nice to see, like, people coming together, like, as a result of the stories and, the videos, because that really means a lot to me. Do you know what? I've got such a bad back at the minute. It's between my shoulder blades, I get so much pain. If anyone else gets that, let me know, because I put like a bottle behind my back at the minute. I'm just even the position I'm in now, it's hurting so much. It's been hurting for weeks. And it's just it's so annoying. It's this one spot I always get on my back, and it's so painful. I'm doing it now. But yeah, it's actually, when it's like when it hurts, but it's like a nice pain. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know if you guys know what I mean, but that's what I'm doing right now on my back, and yeah, it's painful. But yeah, do you know what? I need to do yoga, I think. I've got such tight muscles and back and shoulders and everything. I think I just need to do like yoga or something along those lines. It's just so I can relax my back a little bit, and my hip and my legs and shoulders and neck and bloody fingertips. I'm telling you, everything's bloody tight all the time. The thing is, I want to get a massage, but I haven't got the money to be spending £35-40 on a massage every single time I do it, So I need to do stretching, I think stretching's the way forward, honestly. But it's just having the time and commitment, isn't it? As always, committing to something and just doing it. That's what I'm trying to focus on more now recently, is just doing something, like just being committed, and sticking out with things. Because, do you know what? I need to start going on more runs as well. Definitely. But yeah, I probably should end this now, really. But yeah, so I'll be gone for a little while, but I will definitely be back. So I'll speak to you guys soon, and love you lots. Bye.